What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by T&K Hunting Gear. If you haven't heard about T&K, then it's about time you do. I've been using T&K gear out in the field and on hunts and have fallen in love with their stuff. T&K is veteran-owned and 100% made in America using only American-made products. All their gear is covered under a lifetime warranty with no questions asked. If it breaks or fails, they will fix it or replace it for free. T&K is your resource for bino harnesses, bow slings, and a lot more amazing gear. For more information about T&K hunting gear, go to tnkhunting.com or search for them on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Freedom on and stay soulful. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Soulful series with Tim Douglas of The Inspired Way. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today we are getting into Chapter 4 of Silence and Awareness of Nature and Creation. And once again, this is a Soulful series, so we're diving into what makes our soul healthier, what grows our soul, what nourishes our soul. And the soul is made up of mind, will, and emotions, and making sure that we take care of us. Take care of us, because if we don't take care of us and you don't take care of yourself, then we end up not being any good for anyone else. And so we need to learn how to water our own tree so that we can bear fruit that is good for the world, because a tree is known by its fruit. Either it bears good fruit or it bears bad fruit. And I know in my life, I want to bear fruit that is good. And so to get fruit that is good, it means that you have to take care of that tree. And then once you take care of that tree, it can feed the world. It can feed your community. It can feed humanity. And part of that is silence and awareness of nature and creation. So Tim, great to have you back again, man.
Thanks, man. This is fun, and I think we're going to be doing some more of this stuff.
Definitely, definitely. There's no coincidences and everything happens for a reason. So, Tim,
Fun.
why don't you go ahead and bring us in to silence and awareness and why it is so crucial to have silence and awareness and a part of nature and creation for the soul.
Yeah, man. I think before I go there, I just want to touch base on your opening. As far as like bearing fruit and the way a tree stays healthy is through pruning. And if we think about it in our own lives, there's areas in our lives that we need to prune. We need to cut off. Whether it's relationships, whether it's something that we do, it's just not bearing fruit anymore, or it's just not serving us well anymore. It's just not serving our soul, because we're talking about our soul, right? Mentally, we're just not in the right headspace. Emotionally, we're just all distraught over it. It's just not bearing fruit. And so I think we need to be aware that, like, for a healthy tree to bear good fruit, it has to be pruned. And so there's things in our life that we may need to prune or should prune. And um, when I said this a while back on, I think it was a post or maybe it was a podcast episode that I did, is like, what you get rid of, you must replace with something else. And so when you're ridding your life of something, going in, from one season to the next, don't take the garbage that's in that season into the next season, because how you leave will be how you enter that season. And so, like, whatever I leave here, that void, I need to replace over here. So, if there's things in our lives that we're needing to prune, which is a great segue into silence, like, if there's areas in our life that we need to prune, like it's a negative thought process or things like that, a great way to combat that is to plug in another exercise, another practice of creating silence in our life. If we're going to say, like negative thoughts, or just our mind is just going bonkers all the time because there's so much noise out there. Look, there's noise on the radio, there's noise on the TV, there's noise, from our coworkers, there's noise from family members. There's so much noise out there that we need to create a space where it's just quiet. And the challenge with that is, at first, it's going to be very uncomfortable,
Hmm.
and it's going to create some uneasiness, some unrestness in the moment, right? And we talked about rest and recovery on a previous chapter. And yet we're going to get into that moment of silence and just sit in silence. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And it's just like, but that can be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
very uncomfortable, very uneasy.
And with uncomfort, discomfort comes growth.
Yeah.
Discomfort is what gets people moving. Oh, this is not comfortable. I better move to this spot where it is comfortable. Or I'm uncomfortable in this situation or in this environment or in this moment in time. I'm going to get out of it and then put myself in a different position, whether it's a headspace, a physical location, an environment of society, whatever it is. We have free will. You listeners, get to choose for yourself what is healthy and not healthy, and what is good for your soul and what is not good for your soul. And just like a tree is known by the fruit it bears, you also have a choice in what fruit you bear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so getting into the silence and the awareness of nature, so often we our thoughts become our thoughts become our words, and our words become our reality. And if we are just a mirror of society, repeating what society is constantly buzzing in our ears, in our head, the noise of culture and all that, and we can tell in our own soul that we're not in a place of comfort, right? Human nature wants safety. It wants,
Yeah.
it thrives in a safe environment, which a safe environment breeds a creative environment, and creation is what we were meant to do because we're made in the image of God. So when we have the time and space for ourselves to be at rest, at to have clarity, because it's hard to get clarity through noise.
Well, there's so much noise. I was gonna say, yeah, when there's so much noise, it's so hard to hear, and get clear on your thoughts. So
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, and ironically, we're recording this that's going to be played over a radio, and one of the things that I want to end up talking about is turning the radio off. How do we get to a place of silence? How do we get to a place? And this is why hunting, this being the Soulful Hunter podcast, and why it's been such an impact in my life, is being able to get into a location of
Mhm.
silence,
Yeah, yeah,
getting
yeah,
into nature and creation where there's no distraction, where there's no buzz of society, where there's no noisy culture constantly being advertised and
yeah,
shot in your face, and all your senses being lit up by the buzz of life. You go to a place of solitude, and that's where you can get in alignment with yourself, in alignment
yeah,
with your creator, and it allows your life to blossom and create
yeah.
fruit.
And I love that, man, because it's one of the things that I do for my retreats or my weekend experiences is, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but it is a lot that's built on nourishing the soul or replenishing the soul. And there's aspects of the silence and awareness of creation as part of one of our hikes that we do. um, and it's I love that because it is getting outside of our current environment, out of our environment where there's a lot of noise. um, Noise could even be like, crap, I got this paperwork sitting on the floor to the right of me. I got to do this. I've got this over here I've got to take care of. Oh, the yard needs to be mowed. Oh, the neighbor needs this. Oh, my wife needs this. Oh, the coworkers, blah, 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 blah. It just goes on. It doesn't even have to be the news. It's just the own chatter inside of our own brains. And to be able to shut that stuff off, man, takes practice. And one of the best places, and you said it, is getting out into the wilderness. And I love the word wilderness. Like, take that. Let's take the first part of that, and it's, I want to study this out because I don't know it. The first,
Wild.
wild. Get out into the wild, and I want to understand, like, what does ness mean? Or wilder. There's wilder and then ness. Like when you put ness, like happiness, on the back end of the word, the NESS, what does that actually imply? What is the meaning of that? Because we get wilder when we get out into nature, right? There's this wilderness in us, and it's allowing that to come out, and it's because we're in a space that doesn't have all the noise. We allow the natural things that are within us to come up and to come out. Like, I hear God speak to me so much when I'm out there in nature, right? Because there is a lot of, silence out there. There's nothing, but the birds and the nature. And man, Paul talks about it in his opening chapter of his book, where he talks about sorry, is is the things that God made was good, right? And creation speaks of the goodness and the glory of God through the dazzling colors and the intoxicating smells and scents and the all these things, that the senses that we can pick up on, the birds chirping and the sunrise, the sunsets. And I just love being out there because it does create this space for me to feel like this rush of energy, this rush of excitement and joy for life again,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and it and I know some people don't like the word to recenter yourself or center yourself, but really it's just an alignment. It's a realignment with, like, what is it that I'm really about?
Hmm.
What is it that when I go back home that I need to take care of, that I need to show up well in, and how have I not been doing that? And it allows me to get away from the noise to be able to do that, and that's where I do a lot of deep thinking, is in the woods.
Yeah.
And and that takes practice, because the first time you do it, you're going to have so many thoughts. And I
Totally.
learned this, if I may, and then I'll let you speak in. So, um when mindfulness was a big buzz back in, I don't know, 2017, 2018, it's like mindfulness practice and all this other stuff. Dude, that stuff is freaking legit. I told my pastor at the time, I said, it's no wonder that people have issues, even people inside the church and outside the church, is because there's so much chatter going on inside their heads. They don't take time to silence it, to allow it to. And it's not like we're forcing it to silence.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness practice, the way I studied under, or, I say studied, but really learned under Peter. I can't even think of his last name, but anyway, he he went and studied overseas as a monk, and then came back and created the app called Headspace. And the way he explains it is like this, and this is the way I love to explain it. When you sit down and you're trying to be silent, it's almost as if you're sitting down on the edge of the curb on a busy street, and the cars are running back and forth, and it's like you and trying to trying to look at every single car that goes by. Oh, there goes a yellow one. Oh, there's a red one. Oh, green. Oh, blue. Oh, that was pretty. Oh, that was cool. And it's just constant. It's just boom, 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 barrage, right? Because there's so many cars going back and forth versus just sitting there and just allowing it to be,
Mm-hmm.
allowing the cars to go where they're going to go. And it's the same is true with our thoughts. It's just allow the thoughts to come in, not doing anything with our thoughts, but allowing them to come in, not entertaining them or anything, and just letting them go.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting them be.
Yeah.
And I think for me, practicing that, and I say the word practice because it's not a one-time thing. It is a practice of sitting there and allowing it just, okay, if my thoughts wander, I just gently pull my thoughts right back to, my bum on the chair, my foot on the floor, an anchoring awareness, right? It's back to that awareness of touch, back to the awareness of our senses. And so out in nature, the awareness of creation, I'm aware of, like, if my thoughts start to wander, I start to think, like, do I hear water? Do I hear the wind blow?
Yeah.
Do I hear the birds chirp? So it's back to the awareness of what's around me.
Yeah. Peripheral vision is such an interesting thing because I'm staring at a video that you and I are recording so I can see your face, and yet my peripheral, I'm aware of my surroundings. And
Yeah.
so acknowledgement of our surroundings and acknowledgement of what's going on is good and it's okay. And at the same time, your attention doesn't need to be there. Your attention, this goes back to our previous chapters where you get to be in control of your own mind.
Yeah.
Not
100%.
being a log on a river that floats down without a rudder and it goes wherever it goes. So backing up a second and diving into, you were talking about the definition of wild, wilder, and nest.
Yeah.
So I pulled this up real quick, just did a quick Google search.
Is it wilder though, or is it wilder? See, I would pronounce it wilder. I know we say wilderness, but I like the word wilder. We're just wilder, man.
That's very interesting.
Because it's wild with ER on the end.
So I'm going to pull up a couple things. First off,
Yeah.
definition of wild. It can be used in multiple ways. And everyone can of an animal or plant living or growing in the natural environment, not domesticated or cultivated. Okay, so that's like, it's untouched. So synonyms to wild are unbroken, which I love. Here's two more synonyms, because if you want to refer to yourself, I want to refer to myself as unbroken. I also want to refer to myself as fierce. Fierce is a synonym of wild. I also want to refer to myself as ferocious.
Come on, yeah.
I put a social media post up the other day where it showed not many people. I don't think I got any actual response from it because it had a curse word in it. Excuse my language, but it said the word shit. And it showed Jesus in the temple, and it said, me, love and light. Also me, I will flip this shit upside down where he's throwing the table. And I say that because I want listeners to understand that my heart, a lot of things you can tell a fruit or tell a tree by the fruit it bears. My fruit is for goodness. A description word that I just used right there is just another way of saying another word, right? We all have nicknames. So I'm not saying whether the word that I use is good or bad. It's a word. Now, when it comes to that meme that I posted, I referred to it and I had a quote up above and I said, this brings me back to my youth where I was taught that don't confuse my kindness as a
Mhm.
weakness.
As a
So
weakness,
when I
yeah.
see the word wild and I see synonyms of fierce and ferocious, I'm like, yes, I want to be that. So don't just because we're talking soulful series and silence and awareness and gratitude, just because we're talking about gentle things, gentleness is goodness.
Mm,
Gentleness doesn't mean you're not fierce. It doesn't mean
right.
you're not ferocious. It doesn't
That's
mean
good.
that you're unbroken. And so that's the definition of wild. And then we're going to go into what you wanted to say is wilder or wilder. And definition says cause to lose one's way, lead or
Mm.
drive astray. So if you are, I guess, wilder or wilder, it means you've lost your way. So it's a ferocious, it's a
Or flip the script on that though, but to change the perspective. Wilder, like to me, I look at that and I go, I want to get wilder with the thoughts, the negative thought. In other words, I want to rid myself of
ooh,
those
I
things.
want to change my direction. I
Exactly.
am acknowledging the fact that I'm going to change my direction towards a
Correct.
silence, an awareness. Oh, I like that, Tim. And then the last part is ness, Ness,
Yeah.
and that is a promontory or a cape. So if you think of like the cape here in the state of Washington, we have the Cape of Disappointment, where they realize that it's a prominent land structure, and yet there's no river that goes from the east coast to the west coast because of the continental divide. And that's a history lesson for all you people. So Ness is like it's a condition. So if we're talking about being fierce, about being unbroken, about changing our ways, acknowledging where we are and wanting to make change, and then we realize that the nest part is it is prominent in our lives.
Mm.
We are making
Yeah.
a prominent change. We are doing it
I love that.
ferociously. We are doing it with this undomesticated, untamed wildness that is just beauty. Man, you're getting me all fired up right here.
Look, I love that because when you're saying all this, I'm thinking of the book, and I know we're talking a lot about wild right now and wilderness and things like that. But Wild at Heart, the book Wild at Heart by John, um, here I got it right here, John Eldridge, um, is it's really about what he's talking about there is like for every man, like there's a battle to fight, a beauty to rescue, an adventure to live.
Yeah.
And the thing is like what does silence and awareness of creation or nature really do for that? For me, it allows us to get back to the wilder side of what he was saying here, who we were created to be, right? Wild at heart, and not to be stuck in the, you know, the chaos of culture today and the craziness of the way the world is today. It allows us to get back to what God has created us to be
Yes.
and to resemble the goodness of him, and it's to resemble what he has for us. And so when we go out into creation, if we look at that, man, we're actually talking about, you know, everything that he created, he said was good.
Yes.
And so now we're back into these area when everything in our life seems to be a mess, right? There's so much chaos, there's so much chatter, so much noise. Nothing seems good. Everything seems to just be and yet that out there allows us to experience his goodness, experience the life that he's created for us,
Yes.
and that get that wildness back into us to live wilder, to live free. But
Yes.
it's by silence and allowing that stuff to separate and get ourselves away from that.
Yeah. Two things that I want to say because I love what you're saying. I want to build off of it. Um, it is first when we go back to when I talked about a tree, a lot you said earlier, people don't like the word centered or realign, or
Yeah, yeah,
that can get a little Eastern religion or
yeah,
whatever. I
yeah.
mean, at the end of the
Whatever.
day,
Yeah,
like I said, words
it's
are
true.
words. Well, words are words. So
Yeah,
either
yeah,
choose it for what it is. I like to use the word grounded,
yeah.
and if
Oh, I
grounded
don't
it
know, man. That's a little too woo-woo
right,
for me.
right.
Not just
So
kidding.
if grounded and centered or recentered are the same
Yeah,
thing, a tree, in order to live and in order to bear fruit, has to be planted. It has to
yeah,
be grounded in the dirt.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
even a tree, so for example, a fruit tree, it might produce some fruit if it's stayed in a pot, but the minute you put it in a full ground and it allows the expanse of nature to have its full reach, it really blossoms. So that is one thing I wanted to add, but also I like to Google things and see what Google comes up with. Not that I recommend Google in any means. However, with that being said, I just want to throw out some ideas. So I Googled silence, silence and the soul. And it took me to this webpage by Gustavo Rossetti, I think it is. And it said, mental noise is destroying your mind. But there's a quote that stood out to me because one of the things, what we're talking about, the wild, we're talking about the goodness, we're talking
yeah,
about getting off track of main society and getting on track with what we want in our
yeah.
lives and in our community. It says, and this, I love this, and it goes so good with what you just spoke about. Silence is not the absence of action, but fertile ground for reflection and learning. And it takes that
Yes.
quote is taking everything that we just talked about. Silence is not the absence of action. We are in control. We get to choose what
Yeah.
track we want to go on. And then it also says fertile ground, meaning the fruit you bear is based off of the ground in which you plant yourself in. Fertile ground for reflection, because inward reflection leads to outward correction, and
Mm,
learning. Knowledge is power. The more we gain, the more informed we are, and then we are the owner of knowledge and we get to
yeah.
choose. I don't have to go to Google to understand the definition of things. Now that is in me. I've spoken it out loud. I've lived it. I've experienced it, and I'm not going to now forget what that
Yeah.
is. That right there, I feel like was a quote that just brought all these different roots into the main trunk of silence and
Mhm.
awareness of nature and creation and how important it is for nourishing
Yes.
our soul.
Yes. So good. And one of the things that I thought of while you were sharing this, and hopefully this aligns well, and but it was just a thought that I had is even when I'm out there, there's times when specifically during the the fall or winter, in early spring. I don't do it too much after springtime and in the summer because of I don't know if I'm going to step on some snake or whatever. So, but I can go off trail because so many times we just get in the rut. And if we go out and we just hit a trail and we just do the trail, it can be good. But man, it's amazing when we break that chain of thought of like, go on that adventure, kind of like that adventure that I mentioned in Wild at Heart. The adventure piece of it is for me is getting off the trail,
Mm,
looking at the map. Where am I? Where could I cut across this mountainside, go up? Like this last trip out, I went up and I climbed up this mountainside. And it was freaking steep, but up there it was so quiet. And I thought, it was just, and talk about awareness, man. I saw some trees up there that I'm sure has never seen a human being in their lives,
yeah.
right? Not that trees see, but it's like, but I know maybe a human has never seen that tree,
Yeah.
or if a human has seen that tree, it's been a long, long, long time. Like some of these trees, over 100 years old, they're humongous,
Yeah.
you know and most people don't get to see that. They stick to the trail, they stick to, which is cool. Like, start where you are, start where you can. But for me, the adventure begins in getting off trail, seeing things outside of the norm,
Yes.
right? Getting into changing my environment to
Yes.
experience it.
If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always
Always,
gotten.
yeah.
And I
100%.
I said this on the very first podcast that I was ever a guest on. This is a couple years ago. I said hunting, and this is why it's the soulful hunter. This is why I believe that hunting is one of the most powerful things that you could ever experience in your life, because hunting is not hiking. It's not staying within the boundaries of
Yeah.
life. Hunting is expansive, and you are a participant in nature, not just an observer. The minute you choose to break trail and to go on your own journey that
Mhm.
is not done by previous people in search of what you want, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
talking about animal, we're just saying what you want, what
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
in
Really.
search of, your pursuit is the minute that you end up finding what you need,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you
Totally.
always get what you want in life. It's
Dude,
whether or not you identify what it is that you want to go get.
yeah, that is so true. I love that because that is exactly what I got this last trip out is I saw this opening, kind of this ravine heading up, and I was looking at the map, and I'm like, oh, it's a mountain up there, and I'm like, wow, I wonder what it's like. I'm like, oh, that's pretty steep, and I just kept walking on the trail, and the next bend I saw it again. I'm like, and I'm like, nah, I should probably stick to the trail, and I'm like, okay, if that comes up again, I'm taking that opportunity. And so I turn another bend and I see this opening. It goes on up, and I'm like, all right, giddy up, let's go. Dude, I was so giddy, so freaking giddy coming down off that mountain. And I mean, it was steep. I'm sliding, I'm having a, riding the wave of the leaves,
Yeah.
so to speak. But I was so giddy when I got back down on that trail because I was just like, oh, I needed that. I needed that. So
So because you followed your own heart, you chose the silence. You chose to change your direction of what the
yes,
normal society is, which is that trail. We're using an actual trail as a
exactly.
representation for our
Yep.
soulful trail, right?
Yeah, totally.
Your soul's trail went this way, and what happened when you followed and
Yeah.
took care of your soul? You got lit up like the 4th of July. You're giddy.
Yeah,
You experience the wonder, the grandeur that life
it was
has in
amazing.
store for you when you made the
100%.
decision to pursue the things that took care of your own soul.
100%.
That's
100%.
beautiful.
Love it.
All right, so guys, we are gonna have to wrap this up. I know that we've talked about doing a 4 or 5 part series. I honestly am gonna let this roll as long as I feel like we have something to go off of, which we still have a few more topics. The next chapter that we're going to be diving into is solitude, which builds off of the silence and awareness. So you can stay tuned for that. Once again, if you are not aware, Tim does personal coaching, and it's a great resource for you to reach out to. If you ever want some personal coaching, go check out Tim Douglas at The Inspired Way. I'm Johnny Mack. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful.
Stay soulful.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.